Well, Al, great to see you. It's been a while.
Yep,
So
it's been a long while, hasn't
it has been a few
it?
years. But
Yeah,
thank you
yeah,
for agreeing to do this interview all about Fighter's Mind. Um, because you're the inspiration, the reason behind the charity that I'm starting. And you very kindly allow me to use the name and the concept. So I want to say off the bat, thank you.
yeah.
It's very
Welcome.
exciting. And I just thought today would to get the man himself in front of the camera.
Mhm.
And so, Alan, what is Fighter's Mind?
So, Fighter's Mind initially started off, obviously, it sort of developed a little bit since its inception, but it's mental performance coaching for combat athletes, fighters, martial artists. I've been a martial artist since I was about 14, so a couple of years. And it just sort of happened really. I did all my sort of training, personal development training, sort of hypnosis, NLP, IMT, all that, all those kind of all the things. And I really, I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to just do. I didn't want to do Fighter's Mind. I didn't want to do it. I was like, oh, I wanted to do therapy and I wanted to do this stuff like that. And the more I learned, the more I realized, oh my God, these really powerful tools and techniques and strategies can be very easily, well, not very easily, but with somebody who's sort of been in martial arts can be sort of like I suppose exported, transposed, and applied to fighters and combat athletes. That's how it initially started. So it almost didn't start, and then I was just like, I sort of had a sort of bit of an internal conflict about it. Oh, it's I don't want to do that. But yeah, I started working with fighters and stuff, and it sort of developed from there. And I've done it for sort of businesses and so on and so forth. So it's because I suppose the streams and the themes behind it are applicable to any kind of anything that's got any kind of performance element really.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know if that's much of an answer, but that's kind of
That is, and so who do you primarily work with in the realms of combat sport or fighters?
yeah. So I've worked initially. I was working more with MMA fighters, jiu-jitsu people, uh, but my long history, my the roots of martial arts were from karate, and so that was more sport karate. So I sort of worked with the England team and stuff like that, and
Sure.
so it's sort of, but I've worked with archers and international cricketers and people from lots of different kind of sports, but largely, you know, jiu-jitsu. Also, I did loads of unlicensed boxing people. I worked with loads of sort of uh, them, so
Right.
unlicensed boxing folk. Um, I really like working with boxers actually because they're pretty disciplined, and they kind of, if you give them instructions or ideas or you know um, if you say, right, you've got to do this, this, and this, they'll come back and they'll have done it. Where a lot of clients that are, let's say, in the coaching world or the therapy world, they're like, did you do the things? Oh no, I tried it once. So having grown up with martial arts and that kind of like that self-discipline that you see in boxing, that you see in MMA, that you see in sort of jiu-jitsu and so on, uh, it's very gratifying to work with fighters, and I really liked it because obviously I was a fighter myself, uh, and uh, and so that was always the theme really that ran through it. Working with fighters, boxers, combat athletes of any description really.
Tell me more about the fighter. So what's your history? Because I mean, you're keep
Mm.
because I know you're playing it down, but I want people to know that this is coming from a place of experience and talent.
Yeah, I mean, so I started doing karate when I was 14, and uh, was training at a very kind of like a Shotokan karate school. So it was,
Yeah.
and there was a guy, Willie Thomas, who went on to become my mentor. He was sort of, I think it was like 5 times, middleweight world champion. Wonderful guy. Kind of took me under his wing, and started to train me. And he was doing more sport karate, which was much more athletic and dynamic. And so I started training with him really, and then from him, I because he represented England and he fought in the Europeans, won the Europeans.
Huh.
I then started training more with him. So I was training with Vic Charles, who's an
Oh,
amazing. I think it was 5 times heavyweight world champion, amazing athlete. Mervyn Etienne, God rest his soul, who was a wonderful, wonderful fighter as well. So I was training with the sort of Vic Charles's academy up in Covent Garden. So I think I started off. I entered and it was an international competition. I took a bronze, and then I sort of I fought in the British, and I kind of won it for about 30 seconds, and then I got set. I mean, it's quite a story, which is I think it's one of the reasons why I sort of got into the mindset stuff, because my mindset failed me. I was ahead. I was. It was the British Championships. I was like under 21s, so I was fighting against some Scottish guy. No
oh,
offense. No, I'll try and not
no,
explain.
go through it. Go
And
through it.
I was about 2 or 3 points ahead of him, and then I started to dream about myself in the podium in the middle of the fight. What a pillar, And then he like went, say 5-3, 5-4, 5-5, and then I was like, what's happening here? And then he went sudden death, and he just did like sudden death thing. So I took a silver in that event, but and I think that really, in a good way, scarred me. Not scarred me, that's the wrong word, but that had an impact upon me to make me think I have to, I have to use my mindset. And then, I would go to England squad training with the legendary Tiki Donovan, who
Oh,
was
yeah.
East End hard nut karate guy. I remember one time we were doing the training, and then we stopped for, it was like an all-day affair, sort of the England squad training. So we trained all morning, and then we went out for lunch, and he sort of like came at us in his giant Range Rover, sort of tried to run us over, and we literally had to jump into bushes and he thought this was high comedy, this guy who's a very tough guy. So then I sort of represented England for karate in the Europeans, and I didn't really do anything really, but I had some good fights, got some experience. I'll try and keep this potted because I feel like I'm rambling a bit, but and
No.
then what happened was I saw a video, a VHS called 101 kickboxing knockdowns, right? And I was like, I saw Thai boxing, and I was like, this guy's doing football kicks on this guy. I was like, what is this? He's elbowing, he's kneeing, And then I kind of, I suppose whether it is insecurity or ego, I was like, I have to do that because that's the hardest thing. Like it wasn't just points fighting. It was for real. It was like, well,
Yeah.
you're trying to beat someone. Yeah? So I started training a really good academy in Watford, and
Hmm.
I think I had 13 fights in all. I think I won 11, lost one, and drew one. And um, yeah, I took an English heavyweight title and a British kickboxing title. So
Wow.
that was
That's
it. And then I sort of went off to jiu-jitsu, and I've done jiu-jitsu for the last, I don't know, 20 years maybe. So
right.
yeah.
And you're quite good at that as well.
No, I mean, I don't know if I'm any good. I don't compete. My competition days are over. But I love the art. I
Yeah.
absolutely love it. And it's wonderful. I'm looking at jiu-jitsu every single day. It's very, very addictive. If you talk to anyone that does it, it's got a kind of an addictive quality to it, like any other martial art that I've come into contact with.
All right.
But so it was through that that was my sort of, I suppose, experience and my grounding in martial arts and the fight game, really.
Great. And you've got fighters mind coaches out and about as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I've got one in Brazil, got one in York. and yourself, your good self as well. So but I'm very cautious about bringing on new
Mm,
fighters mind coaches because I want to make sure that they can. I mean, it's not much of a brand. I don't push it. I do very little in the way of promotion, right? As you
mm.
know, which you probably tell me off
Why you're
for. But
here.
yeah, but so I want to make sure that people can actually do the stuff. So I want to be able to see them work
Mm,
and stuff. I mean, it's something that I would consider sort of expanding the fighters mind working with fighters part of it as well. But
mm.
yeah, it's I mean, what they say, Paris, New York, Rome. We're at York,
York,
Scotland. I can't remember where in
Edin-
Scotland. Oh no, we Edinburgh, right?
Edinburgh. Yes,
York,
we're from Edinburgh.
Edinburgh, and Sao Paulo. Like so,
Yeah, sounds very
and
exciting.
Woodford Green. So
Yeah, there you go. So, Wood for green, right? Lovely.
yeah,
Yes. Hey, we're growing. And
yeah,
that's why I want to get you here because I think it's a great concept.
mhm,
And the people we're trying to attract are usually disenfranchised people. So the idea is
mm,
like, it's fighter's mind. It'll be conducted in boxing clubs or MMA
yeah,
clubs. So
mhm,
as you know, there's such a great atmosphere, community in those places, and
yeah,
it's safe. So they say, I'm doing fighter's mind. It's not, they're doing therapy. So it's got a bit of a nice reframe.
yeah. And I think one of the ethos of uh, you know fighter's mind that carries over to the work for the charity is very much about uh, clear speaking and putting things in easy to understand terms, not kind of wanting to psychobabble on and these highfalutin ideas. It has to be something that anyone can understand, and I think that's really important
Mm,
because if you've got a if you've got a but I mean I've taught fighters mind in jiu-jitsu gyms and Thai boxing gyms and martial arts gyms and all sorts of stuff. And they're just regular people. So I'm not going to start like posturing or anything like that.
yeah,
It's got to be understandable, for anyone.
yeah. Now that's why I like it because I'm a simple guy, so it's got to be understandable and relatable
Yeah,
to people. Um,
absolutely. Yeah.
so I mean, I take it. So how do you normally conduct them? Is this workshops, main workshops, or one-to-ones?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, if I'm approached by quite often, I'm approached by people in the fight community, and it's a lot of it is word by mouth. So somebody will like, oh, I heard you on Dan Strauss's podcast, so I thought he's a guy that I work with. He's a very good jiu-jitsu guy, who I worked with him, and he attributed his double European belt to the work that we'd done together, which I thought was very kind of him.
Great.
Um, I think the videos are still out there on YouTube somewhere, but so yeah, so I mean that would be like one to one or one to many. So sometimes I'll work with somebody and go, oh, we want to get you in for a seminar, and I'll go and do a seminar, and could be. I think I've done one for a karate club, a very competitive karate club that spanned a couple of days, and but some I'll just do like an intro kind of thing that would be like 2 to 3 hours, just to give people a
Right.
taste, to give people an experience, which people then want to work with me. They can work with me, and it's not for everyone, but it is for some people. So it's not something
Yeah.
I'll try and ram down people's throats. But what I say is, if you've got two fighters and they're both the same weight, both doing the same training, both got the same experience, both got the same attributes, what's the thing that is going to make the difference? Well, it's the mindset,
Mm.
and if somebody's got a weaker mindset, and maybe they haven't done resilient, they're not as resilient. It's the person who is the most resilient or can think about things in a different way, maybe not so fixed and locked on an outcome, more flexible way of thinking, um, is the one that's going to hopefully get the win.
Mm. What do you normally? I mean, very briefly, quickly. What do you do in the intro?
So intro, I'll usually do a couple of I'll talk maybe I won't really talk about myself. I don't really like doing that. So I'll explain what it is, and I'll do little exercises. Like pointing, finger pointing, turning around exercise, and
Yep.
that's a good kind of sort of. I suppose it's quite an interesting convincer. It opens people's minds, and they're sort of like the old kinesiology test where you put your hand out and think
Yeah.
strong, and then think wink, and then calibrate off that a week or other, and done one where like holding people's hands down strong, think weak, and and if you're watching it, you think that's bullshit. And you know what? When I first saw things like that, I thought that is just a pile of bullshit. They're pretending. And then you give it a go, and then you have the experience. There's something to this. Like
Mm.
and it's like sometimes it's not whether you felt stronger. It's about what the evidence gives you. The evidence was when I thought differently about turning around, I had more flexibility. When I thought about being stronger, I was stronger. When I thought about being weaker, I was weaker. And then it can dawn on you to think, oh my God, like I need to be careful about what I'm thinking because
Mm.
it's a double-edged sword. I can use the sword to hack and slash and defend myself, or I can bring it back and it'll chop into my shoulder. So
Yeah.
it's about equipping people and understanding that their mind can be used as a weapon,
Mhm.
to either hurt themselves or defend themselves and to make progress, cut through the forest and make progress. So it's kind of it's how it's opening people's eyes to what they already have. It's not something
Mm.
magic. I'm not doing anything magic. Everyone's got the ability to use
Mm.
their mind in a probably more useful way, I suppose, for one of the better word.
Yeah. And do you, here's one, do you, so you mainly, is it mainly NLP based, your training, as in like what you're doing in Powers Mind?
I mean, they are. Stole. I steal stuff from NLP. I steal stuff from uh, IEMT. I steal stuff from hypnosis. I steal stuff from the sports psychology, and I'll try it and I'll test it. And if it works, I'll keep it. And if it doesn't, I won't work. I'm very much into the idea that if it doesn't work, don't do it. Some of the processes I did early on were like quite, like the power circle and all the rest of it. And you got this whole, it very involved. I mean, some fighters absolutely loved it, but I just found it was just taking too long for something. So it's like if you're learning a martial art or you're learning, you know how to box or anything like that, when you first learn it, you have to learn every single element and then you customize it and you streamline it to make it more effective with less output, I suppose, to make it
Yeah,
more
yeah.
useful.
So it's quite kind of more honed nowadays, more,
Yeah, I mean it depends who I've got in front of the person, who is the
right,
person in front of me rather. And if you work with people long enough, you get to sort of figure out, okay, they try something. Did they respond well to it? No. If not, because I have to be flexible as well. I can't just expect people to, oh, I do the things and then they magically have an experience. Some clients, some athletes are not going to respond well to a certain thing. So you've got to have a different set of tools that you can apply for different people. So it all depends. But I've got set pieces of sort of mental rehearsal that I want everyone to do,
right.
and get to grips with and practice and like a performance state trigger. These are sort of underpinning fundamentals that I'll do with all of the athletes that I work with, and
Great.
then anything else on top, like if they've had a bad experience, they've got their 7 bales of hay kicked out, and then I might do a piece of almost like sort of trauma work, combat trauma work, or so
Okay.
I'll neutralize how they feel about that to get rid of those bad feelings so that so they're not carrying it and it's making them like more undecisive or something. So it's just, yeah. So I've got like some pillars that I do with everyone, and then the rest I'll sort of customize depending on who I've got in front of me.
And so do you do, is that integral eye movement therapy you're doing that when you're neutralizing the,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
cool. Because funny you're saying that, I was thinking if I've got some guys trying to help us, is actually get them on
Mm.
IEMT training because it's so
Uh,
kind of
I couldn't,
so
I
robust.
could not recommend it highly enough. I can't
Yeah.
recommend it. I mean, it's something, with the work that I do every day, I use it every almost every single day.
Yeah,
You know, and it's got an efficacy of about 90%, which for any intervention is insane.
yeah.
You know, so and that's really quite a conservative
I like
estimation.
how Andy sets out his shop and his training. It's robust, it's ethical, it's it's that's something we could, if I thought if I
Yeah, well, it's
get
process driven, so.
yeah,
Mm,
so I thought maybe that and
mm. I mean,
maybe
when I work with the military and the police and so on and so forth, it's certainly my go-to for neutralizing trauma. Um,
great,
and as I said, works at least 9 times out of 10. And that's worked with people that have been in the regiment, that are special forces, that are like armed response people, that have been to London Bridge, that have been to Westminster Bridge, done the 7/7 stuff. So we're not talking about, oh, a cat fell out of a tree. We're talking about real stuff. So it's a highly valuable tool
great.
for therapists or any people that work with people to learn.
Mm, this is great. So this is what I really can ask you. So what's your mind like when you're getting ready for a fight? Because I mean,
Um,
what
yeah,
do
I
you
mean,
a real fighter's mind? Do you calm down? I mean, so I shouldn't be feeding you lines here.
no. So really, ultimately, I mean, what I do a fight is, well, I mean, I don't compete anymore, so it's not really something that I do. But what I do with athletes, and certainly, and it's something that I certainly did with myself and my son when he was competing. Uh, it's about creating a state which is like a balance between focus and calm. Okay. So there shouldn't be any speaking on the inside. There's like no fucking talking, no talking, no talking. If there's talking, you're cutting into your cognitive bandwidth, right? And if you're talking negatively, then if that's going to get you in a negative state, whether it's cortisol or whatever it is that everyone knows that cortisol sort of like, or you're in a negative state or you're a nervous state, it sort of eats into your cognition and your ability to think clearly, by a good percentage. So it's about doing everything that you can to avoid that and proactively creating a state which is, uh, you know, which is flexible, which is fluid, which is calm and proactive.
Great. I mean, I take it it's obviously you did this naturally then.
I've had some ideas myself. I mean, I suppose the big I suppose I was inspired by NLP and hypnosis and stuff, but I sort of developed them into my own things. I mean, stuff like IMD is like, that's nothing to do with me. That's Andrew Austin's work, and that's an amazing body of work. As is his metaphor work. It's really quite
Mm,
incredible, and his work on time is just I literally had a matrix moment today. It was crazy. So his work that he's done on the time portal, he calls it, is unbelievable.
wow.
So he's my, I suppose in a way he's my mentor, I suppose. But so but yeah, some of it is, I've taken it and I've fashioned it for my own ends, through my experience and stuff. But I absolutely will take elements from sports psychology and whatever works really. Very much the sort of Jeet Kune Do
I was
mindset
going
of
to say
like,
yeah,
if it works, keep it. If it doesn't, sack it off. Right.
but I meant like before you were exposed to NLP hypnosis that you
Yeah.
compete at the high level, so you must
Yeah.
you must have had, or even you know I know maybe without going into too much, but maybe in real life encounters like
Yeah.
like
I
you
mean,
must have something that you can switch on to that you go to that place.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the state performance work is something that is really a very fundamental part of the fighter's mind work. Um, and I remember there's another. I suppose he was a peer of Vic Giles called Jeff Thompson, another amazing.
I know
He's
of Jeff Thompson.
Yeah, no, it's different. Jeff Thompson is a black guy. He was a karate guy.
All right, right, right,
Not
right.
Jeff Thompson, the animal, the guy.
Yeah, the door, yeah,
He's
Dorman.
amazing. Yeah, Dorman. and I had his book, and he spoke about visualizing stuff like that. So I would have been, I don't know, like 17. So that's where I first started using stuff like visualization. Uh, and I remember I used visualization before the what do they call it? Gosh, my brain's gone numb. Uh, when they're picking the England squad. I can't remember what they called it. But I used it the night before that they were going to pick, like, who's going to represent England. And it worked because I got picked.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, I've been using a lot of the tools for a long time. So you get to know what works and what doesn't work.
fantastic. As I said, I'm cognizant of the time because you're a busy man. I'm just glad to get you here.
Oh yeah,
But
I'll talk as long as you want me to. Not a problem.
no, it's like the because as I say, I want to get this out to people to explain what fighter's
Mm,
mind is. Um,
mm,
and so as I say, it's the high performance, the
mm.
state, it's all state control. And
Yeah.
what I've been looking at as well, like you've got power moves, you've maybe got a word.
Mm,
I mean, I
mm.
find NLP and hypnosis.
Yeah.
Do you do any? What kind of hypnosis would you do in fighter's mind?
I mean, just conversational stuff.
Yeah,
Well, it again, it sort of depends who I've got in front of me. I have done formal hypnosis where I'm, doing hand drops, where I'm doing rapid inductions. I've done Ericksonian stuff where I'm boring somebody into trance. Usually, because I'm quite utilitarian in my approach, um, for that read lazy. If I see somebody, if I'm doing mental rehearsal and I see the state shift, then hijack, I'll hijack that relaxed state and go into something that's maybe more, not all the time, but sometimes if I think that the client, if the athlete might respond to a bit of deeper work, then I'll
yeah.
do that. Um, but yeah, so I try to be flexible with it, really.
The reason I say that because I only found out yesterday
Mm,
that Mike Tyson, right? I didn't know that Customato,
mm,
his mentor, his trainer,
mm,
was a
mm.
hypnotist as
No
well.
way. Yeah, I
So
didn't know that.
and I saw this interview and he said he was getting hit. So Customato was hypnotizing from the age of 13. He actually adopted them
Really?
as his
Just gonna put a
son.
light on. Yeah,
And he actually, so Tyson actually attributes his success to hypnosis. He goes
Uh,
getting hypnotized every day.
yeah. Well,
Same
I
with
mean, it
who else?
you know,
Floyd
it's
Mayweather as well.
yeah, it's funny, uh, uh, we're all exposed to some form of hypnosis, one way or the
Yeah,
other.
yeah,
People who we hold in authority, peers, and and I see that in my sort of day-to-day work, where people will have this locked idea of their abilities and their capacities, and people who are holding themselves back, whether it's athlete, whether it's police officers, whether it's sportsmen, whether it's business people, and it's and if if you can see that and ask the right questions, and not just ask right questions, but it's not about doing the work for them, but also like planting seeds and getting them to explore the things.
mm,
uh it's unbelievable the progress that you see in people, and that's, I mean, that's just gold. That's why we do what we do. To
mm,
see people change and progress is just, that's a wonderful thing to see.
mm. No, as I say, this is great, and my ambition is to get you up to sunny Edinburgh sometime.
I'm a big fan of Edinburgh.
Well, we're a big fan of you.
No, bless your heart.
You got to come up. Because as I say, we're going to be doing like more like intro workshops.
Yeah.
Giving not a taste, but obviously they're not
Mm,
professional fighters, but
mm.
helping them more like with anxiety,
Yeah.
depression,
Yeah.
just using that, like in a way, fight, fighter's mindset. So it's great.
Yeah.
But it's all down to you. And as I say, I'm really well, thank you. It's
Well, you're most welcome, and it's a wonderful cause. And I think, my, like, a parting shot would be that fighting is not just about force and violence and stuff like that. it really is an art form, and there's so much that you can take from that. You know, if you talk to any martial artist or any fighter or jiu-jitsu guy or boxer, you know, that's trained for any length of time, you know, they'll almost certainly tell you that some of the biggest lessons that they've learned about the development of their own character, what's good, what's bad, what's weak, what's strong, you know, areas that they're, you know, of interest, areas that are not interested, comes from that exploration. And it's really weird to think like, you know, two people that are trying to beat each other senseless or trying to choke each other unconscious or break each other arms, that you can have this exploration and growth of the internal world as well.
Mm.
And, you know, and through that, the ideas are mappable and usable for anyone. You know, a lot of my material isn't new. You know, I'm just sort of like channeling it in a different way. So I'm not kind of, you know, well, I'm the you know, like some super smart person. I'm not that person, but
Well, I mean, I know, well, I know you, and yeah, you're being humble, but it's it's exciting, and I mean,
mm,
I'm really excited about, you know, already we're getting some really good feedback.
that's really good.
We'll have to get you a hoodie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
Love a hoodie. I'm surprised I'm not wearing one. Well, I was wearing one earlier. I was wearing one all day, but I went to the gym and I came back and I thought, oh, I can't wear a hoodie, you know, for this thing. So,
obviously, the heck has to put mine on. We're pimping her, so we've got our boxing club, hopefully, logo on it as well.
oh, nice.
What's it? The logo of Wildcard.
Oh, lovely.
Because the guy, Craig, who's my boxing coach, he was under Freddie Roach.
Oh,
And
nice. Oh,
so,
great.
yeah, and he's, again, it's just lovely. Everybody's kind of getting saying, yeah, I want to support, you know, and
Mm,
it's a great
mm.
cause. So,
Yeah.
but all started with you, my man. So thank you.
Well, you're most welcome. Most
Yeah.
welcome. Anytime.
Well, we'll have to interview again. And
Of
but
course.
for just now, because I know you're the busiest man in show business, I will let you
Something like
go.
that.
Oh,
Yeah.
I talk a good game. I'm just going to
Businessman not in show business for me.
one day. But anyway,
I'm really not the public speaker because I'm just turning to.
you've
Well,
been very
you've all
shy.
seen that wonderful film, I Swear, you know, with that
Yes,
lovely Gala Shields boy.
there you go.
Um,
Well done.
so, but I don't have Tourette's, but sometimes it can appear like that. But yeah, my public speaking is really not as smooth as what I'd like it to be. But there we go. What can you
Well,
have?
John's a legend. I've actually seen him in action, and
Amazing,
yeah,
absolutely amazing.
he's
Yeah,
yeah, it was yeah, it was quite a powerful film because he actually went through all of that. You know,
yeah,
a
incredible.
real
Yeah,
a real pioneer. Who knows? Yeah.
absolutely.
You
Yeah,
know, I never thought I'd get the word in Gala Shields in this interview, but
get in there.
there we go. Good
Yeah,
for the gala.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I'll let you go. I'm just going to
All
finish
right.
recording now, but thanks for your time. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, and I wish you all the best with your endeavors, man. And you know,
Thank you so much.
anything I can do to help, just let me know.
Oh, don't you will. You know I will.
All right, mate.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, mate.
And stop.